Episode 22. Kate and I discuss... What was the name of that episode? North of the Wall. Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 6. Alright, well, we can talk about Winterfell first. I unfortunately have a lot of whinging I can do. But I got a new word to add to the...
I kept thinking Harry Potter of little whinging.
Yeah, well, okay, so Winterfell is just one long whinge for me. I don't like anything about it. To me, it's dumb. Arya, completely unlikable, we don't know why she's bullying her sister or trying to intimidate her, or it just, none of it makes sense to me.
Well, it's actually that, and a couple other things that I think are hints why I think it's a red herring, and they're trying to take us down a path that's actually to distract the audience from the fact that I think something else is going behind the scenes.
But they had a scene in private. Like, why would they act like that in private if they're putting on a show?
But how does Littlefinger know everything about everything on the scale that he seems to? I mean, not everything, but he knows a lot. So he's clearly got a way to know things. And that's not going to just stop at Winterfell. I don't think a few doors are going to stop Littlefinger from knowing things. And they're bickering. Like, I was so upset about it, either last episode or the one before. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is, and I talked about how fickle the North was. And then they actually talk about it here in this episode, which makes me think that maybe the writers knew about that and knew that people were going to gripe about it. For me, it's as if it's so far-fetched for me at this point. It's got to be a setup.
So you think they're trying to trap Littlefinger somehow?
Yes. This is one where, like, if I'm wrong, I'm going to be so mad. But I actually really think I'm right on this. It's so far-fetched at this point. It'll explain how Arya was so quote-unquote careless last episode to get caught by Littlefinger. It's like he thinks he's got her, but she's actually got him. I think she's way too trained for this. I think she's way too good. She doesn't just leave her faces out to be found. I think because it's so far-fetched, and I think that people's emotions, and they got me for a little bit if this is how it goes, people get caught up and they buy it. I think they're trying to keep fans guessing. And so here's the hints that I think I got from the episode with it. Littlefinger tells Sansa, Arya will never betray her family. And then Arya says to Sansa, I will never betray my family. Arya and Sansa are family. I think Arya will not betray Sansa. It doesn't make sense that they've been gone and go through all this stuff each separately and then get reunited and just have so much, like, it just does not add up to me at all.
Okay.
And so then I also think that there's a possibility, like this I'm less sure about. This is me just speculating, that they made the point of talking about Arya's faces and that Sansa now knows about this quote-unquote power that Arya has. What if they take Littlefinger's face? They control all the Knights of the Vale and all his supposed connections and power he have just by people who know him. Yeah. They would control all the Vale and all those knights that we were talking about before of why Littlefinger gets to stay and stuff. And here's the thing. Sansa knows Littlefinger. She knows what he's about. She is his weakness. Yeah. I think they're playing him.
The faces are funny because...
That was Walder Frey, right?
I'm not sure. I just mean that even if they take Littlefinger's face and Arya wears it, she's still 4 feet tall, but they figure out ways around that.
I don't think mass maintains itself in this universe.
Apparently not. Okay, so do you have another clue? Or are those the ones?
I also thought that the scroll piece wasn't very, like, Sansa she makes a point in saying this episode, I've already married 2 enemies, and no one's had a problem too big about that. A little scroll is nothing compared to the actual marriages. I think she's feigning fear from a scroll, pretending to fall into Littlefinger's plan. I don't think a scroll means anything. I think it's all feigned. It's so contrived to me at this point, it must be feigned.
Well, it's definitely silly, so I hope there's a payoff next episode that justifies it.
Well, and everybody would love to see Littlefinger get fingered.
I wouldn't. I would like to see Littlefinger actually do something worthwhile. He's an important character who's just been squandered this season. But yeah, the only sensible thing, if Sansa really felt in danger, would be to keep Brienne around, but she sent her away. So that tells me either she doesn't really feel in danger or she sent her away so she could do bad things to Arya, which is a little far-fetched, but...
Well, I thought at first that, like, Brienne could protect Sansa from Arya, but then it seemed like because Sansa sent her away, Sansa could do something to Arya. But then I was like, no, none of that's happening. I think it's a couple things. I think one of it is I think Arya can protect Sansa. Again, I think they're family. I think there's something going on there that we just can't see. And I also think that Brienne needs to get back to Jaime. There's something that needs to be closed with that loop. And we got to think of a way that gets her back down to where Jaime is. And this takes care of that.
Yeah, a little convenient plot point.
But it does the trick.
Well, we'll see if it's salvaged. But
and it also makes it seem that Sansa is listening to Littlefinger. It's a great way to have him believe her if they're trying to pull one over on him.
Well, but Littlefinger didn't say to send Brienne away. I thought his advice of keeping her around was actually good advice. If there's a real fear.
He plants seeds. He doesn't always directly say stuff. He plants seeds. I mean, if he's basically saying if Brienne's around to protect you or to protect one sister from the other, and he's trying to get Sansa to turn on the sister or turn on Arya, then they need Brienne out of the way. So he could maybe be saying that.
Yeah. We'll see.
Well, if that's the case, then I don't mind it as much. If that is not the case, then I'm on board with you, and that was utterly ridiculous, and I'm pissed off.
Yeah. We had a short scene with Dany and Tyrion, which is pretty good, I guess, except did Dany say that Jon is too short for her?
Too small for her.
Like, what? Why was that even in there?
I don't know. The only way I could possibly think is that people comment at how small Kit Harington, who plays Jon Snow, is. It's like a fan thing. There's no business of that being in there.
Yeah, that was.
It's not
really
like Dario
silly.
was that huge. The only way is called Drogo. And then, of course, that was going to be an awkward thing to say to Tyrion.
Yeah, that was silly. I don't know why that was there. But other than that, I kind of like the conversation. I think Tyrion is asking good questions. I understand why it wouldn't be the right time to ask them. But they are good questions. And, they might be laying the ground for a little democracy action or something by the end of this show. No more monarchy.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is trying to show the audience we got a certain side of Dany last episode that was pretty ruthless, burning the Tarleys alive. And here is her being open to counsel. It's showing a softer, more open side to hear her counsel and things like that.
Yeah, did you take it that way? I thought she was pretty resentful of Tyrion talking to her.
Well, she's invested to want to think what she did was right, so that doesn't surprise me. But she still listened to him.
Yeah, they did have a conversation. There's not too much to say about that scene, but I did kind of like it. It was something different. Oh, and that reminds me, the very opening scene going over the table at Dragonstone was just a cool scene. The camera going over the map table.
Yeah, and then how the camera leaves off in the north, and then it takes us to the north.
Yeah, so
kind of thought that was neat.
Yeah, just good.
Kind of reminds me of like Indiana Jones.
But
like going back to what we were just saying too, is I also think that scene with Tyrion and Dany was a chance for Tyrion to point out, like, hey, you pretty much just listed everybody who's in love with you or who has been in love with you. And she loved all of them back, I think, except for Jorah, at least romantically, but at least she has loved all of those people in some way or another. So it was a very interesting list that seemed kind of obvious, but maybe she's oblivious and Tyrion's
no,
like,
it was a silly list. She's like, oh, all these men want to go on these adventures, and the only one of them that died for a foolish reason is Khal Drogo. The rest of them are alive. So it was just a bad example, but it was a reason for them to talk about Jon. That was just the way it was written.
But I mean, Drogo didn't even... I mean, he died from a bacterial infection.
Right, but he pushed his chest onto the sword, like, to be a tough guy and show that he wasn't...
But that's how he acts every day of his life. So he didn't do anything different that day than he had done forever.
Yeah. Okay. Now, finally, we get to the big stuff beyond the north, or beyond the wall. And the extremely terrible plan goes pretty much exactly as you might expect.
Well, so I have to say something. So maybe this is just because I grew up in a state that has true winters. But I've noticed this a lot, that people do not wear hats very often. And they have shown wildlings wearing hoods before. But they're in a frickin' blizzard and they've got their ears out. And anybody who's got short hair or a girl wearing her hair back, your ears get so cold unless it's literally like 32 degrees.
You know who did have hoods on was all the extras.
The red shirts. Yeah.
All the extras that we did.
Who was dying sometimes. They covered their faces. I noticed that.
But I like that they killed those pointless people who we knew were going to die, but they did it in a way where you're like, wait, who's that? Is that someone important? You know,
I asked you a couple times, who was that?
Yeah.
And the only other thing that I'll gripe on this too is hypothermia is a very real thing. Jon Snow would have been dead within minutes after coming out of there.
Yeah.
The only way I'll buy it is because he was brought back from the Lord of Light and he's got that automatic warmth that Melisandre does. Otherwise, that boy was dead.
No, the reason that whole scene was there is so that he could have a shirtless scene with Dany later.
But even then, you have to have body heat to warm him up. Like, I was like, okay, they're going to get naked and lie next to him and use body heat. And so I feel like either the writers don't really understand true cold or something else is going on, and I'm just needing to fill in the blanks.
Shirtless Dany scene, that's it.
But that also was a way for her to see his wounds.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so anyway, before we get to the action, there was some good conversations. This really is a great crew of characters, and I could just listen to the voices of Beric Dondarrion and Jorah Mormont.
Oh my god, me too. I was literally thinking that they should just read all audiobooks from now on. Yeah, be the narrators.
The way those guys talk is really
just
cool.
Absolutely amazing. I agree with that.
But yeah, so Jon and Jorah had a kind of cool conversation about Jorah's dad, and he offered him the sword back, and he refused it. So
I really enjoyed that because Jorah's dad, Gior, really was an amazing man, both for House Mormont, but also for the Wall. And this was kind of a chance to really kind of pay homage to the people who loved him in different ways. And I also liked it because they did bring up the fact that as far as they know, Jon's dad, Ned, tried to kill Jorah.
Yeah.
And that they were able to talk about that. And it's kind of an interesting mix. I couldn't help but think that Jon represents everything that Jorah wants to be. That his father loved Jon and gave him the family sword. And then Dany loves Jon. I mean, Jon just has everything that Jorah wants.
Yeah, but Jorah said, I brought shame on my house. I think he's come to terms with all of his failings. And
yeah, it makes him so likable. It was such a redeeming thing for him to not pretend to be anything other than what he was and what his past is and everything. And I liked it. I really enjoyed that scene a lot. Yeah.
There's also conversations, just kind of comic relief between the Hound and Tormund.
Yeah.
It was funny. And the other one was, I think, Beric and Jon had a conversation about dying and what is their purpose in life and stuff.
It was an interesting conversation, the fact that I think we can apply to a lot of real world things where if we have the same long-term goal, it doesn't matter our different ideologies if we want the same thing in the end. And what they're saying is, hey, we want to live. We want to help people to live, especially those who can't fight for themselves. So if I believe in the Red God and you believe in the North, who cares?
Yeah. It was a good conversation. I wish we had more episodes of just those people together. I think it could have made for pretty good stuff.
I don't understand why this season was 7 episodes. They really could have done it longer. There's a lot of missed opportunities. We got just little snippets here of things that could have been way better and way more entertaining and not drawn out just to give us more airtime, but actually legitimate good scenes that could have furthered the story. And I feel like the Jon and Dany thing has been very rushed.
Yeah.
And they could have really given us a little bit more. I mean, for a show that I complain about having a lot of filler in past seasons and stuff, they could have had more filler on that romance.
No, totally. Everything's moving way too fast to be believable.
And I understand I don't want it to end. And I'm sure that's coloring my opinion on this, but at the same time...
Well, no, it's 7 episodes instead of 10. They give us all, so it is a change, and it's kind of bullshit, but...
Well, the momentum is almost like out of control, that they just have to do it because the momentum's so fast, and it's like, we just have to wrap this up. And it's like, well, do you?
Yeah, so they meet the bear, and the Hound doesn't step up to the challenge.
At least he's consistent.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that happened to him at the Battle of Blackwater, and that was potentially very, very embarrassing for him about him being seen as a coward. Like, he had to leave the Kingsguard as a result of abandoning that. I mean, he had a complete life change as a result of that move. So I like that all of a sudden he just didn't get a bunch of courage. It's kind of like the opposite of what we criticized Theon for.
Yeah, I thought he was going to step up after when Thoros was getting eaten and the Hound was watching. I thought he was going to get up and go at that point, but
I think this is building on him working on his fear. I think he's realizing that the only way I'm going to truly survive and fight these things that he now has seen is that it's fire, which has been to him, his whole life, fire's been the enemy, where now it's going to be the thing that saves the world. And so I think this is a chance for us to see him conquering his fear, and especially since Thoros died because of his fear, I think the Hound that's going to stay with him. And I think it's going to be something that's going to help him work on what he needs to.
Maybe there'll be some, some growth out of it.
I mean, maybe he has to set his zombie brother on fire in order to do it and fight him in that way.
Right.
But I think Thoros' sacrifice is going to have meaning for the Hound.
I thought it was... They're just really, these writers.
Do you think, like, they just sit around and be like, hey, let's do this, and they don't have anyone else around to be like, yeah, but that's not going to make sense.
Yeah, they're like, they find a group of 8 or whatever that are isolated for some reason. It's just so stupid. And then
it's like George Lucas writing, where no one wants to tell him, sorry, dude, that's really poor writing.
Yeah, they lure him in with the fire, and then when they capture one, this is before the army shows up. They send Gendry off to go, shoot an email over to Dany that they need a little help. So,
well, and in the episode, they even say, like, oh, how are you handling the cold? And he's like, I've never even seen snow before. And then they send that guy in a blizzard who's going to find his way back.
And he makes it. He makes it all the way to the wall.
And then, 5 feet before.
They fire off a raven that gets to Dany, and she gets to the other side of the wall all within, 2 days or whatever.
I think they have jetpacks for the dragons now.
Yeah, this is just... at some point... I know I bitch about it a lot, and I've purposely tried to stop bitching about it, but it's like, Jesus, guys.
But in real life...
You're not even trying.
There's things called, I can't remember what it is. It's like whiteout or something, that in a true blizzard, you can't even see feet in front of you. You could be, literally, 5 feet away from something and not know it and die. And that's happened. It's just... they must have Southerners, people from King's Landing writing these episodes.
Well, and what's silly is that it's also unnecessary to have these super dumb and contrived things. What they could have done is they could have had... When Dany had that scene with Tyrion, she could have been like, God, all those guys are over the wall. I have to go help them. And she could have just left then. And then instead
of saying he's too small for me, he's a northerner. He's my enemy. Something where you could still say the same point without it being so horribly awkward.
But she could, I'm just saying that she could have left on her own because Jorah and Jon and everyone else is in danger and she knows it. And they could have just had Gendry fight with the rest of them. And the story would have ended up exactly the same without the stupidity of it. So I just don't get it. But anyway, so they lure these guys in for a little trap, and that Jon could beat one of them. So he beat one at the episode of Hardhome, but we could say that the White Walker was caught off guard, that the Red Steel, but now he just straight up beat one.
Pretty easily.
Yeah, they're becoming a little less intimidating, I think. If they would have had Tormund and the Hound fighting the thing at the same time, and then Jon, something like that would have been cool. But Jon just straight up beats it,
I think, honestly, it was just to illustrate the Independence Day movie thing, that if you go after the Queen of the Hive, they all go down.
Yeah, which is obviously going to be important later.
Yeah, I think they had to just somehow show that to the audience. But, I mean, either the Night's King has a horrible job, or is doing a horrible job of picking true warriors.
Right. Yeah, I don't know who these White Walkers are, or how they're picked or whatever. We had the one episode where they took Craster's son and turned him into a baby White Walker.
Yeah, the Whites.
So I don't understand it, but what are you going to do? They brought that up later about how they died, and Beric said, there's a way out of this is we can fight him. And I think that Beric is going to get a chance to fight the Night King, and he's going to lose. So I think that they put that out there. That's my prediction. He'll get a one-on-one fight, and he'll die.
Yeah, I could see that. It's funny. I was saying last episode that, I wonder how they're going to survive, because we saw that shot of them running, and there's just no way. There's got to be some magic. And I said, because there isn't that body of water this time. And I spoke too soon, because that's exactly once again.
you said there isn't a body of water, so there's definitely going to be either dragons or cold hands.
I said magic, yeah.
And it was yep, all those things happened. All those little, what is it called? Deus Ex Machina or whatever. All those things came up. But yeah, so they run over the water. And it was a cool scene. We complain a lot about the story, but you got to give it to the tension, the special effects, everything was.
It was a cool
really
scene, good. And the creators even said, and we were watching the inside the episode, and they were saying that they had to come up with a way that could be feasible of how they could survive. And what I liked about hearing that is it means they had to come up with that, which means George R.R. Martin did not give them that. So at this point, I think that the books could really be different.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited for that. One, because maybe we won't be as disappointed with some things in the books the way we are with some things with the show. Don't get me wrong. I love the show. But at the same time, it's kind of like what you were saying. It's like we still get to experience something new.
Yeah, the books certainly aren't going to be stupid.
And I mean, how different they're probably going to be.
Yeah,
and you know what? If George R. R. Martin is taking his time to make sure his books aren't stupid, okay.
I just pray that...
get them done soon.
Right, I pray the Wind of Winter comes out before the last season.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think only the next book will be out.
Yeah. Alright, so they're fighting him off. All is lost. Danny shows up, which looked amazing. I love seeing the fire hit the ice water and explode in all the different directions. And
I'm finding that the walkers seem to be a bit inconsistent too. So we were talking about the fighting skill of the whites. The walkers seem to be really inconsistent, because in Hardhome they are coming in droves and just running on top of each other to get over the wall. They create their own ladder, jumping and crawling all over one another and not caring. And then here, a couple of them fall in the lake, and all of a sudden they're like, "Halt! Don't go in!" You know, like they seemed a little too aware, like conscientious and cognizant of what was going on to stop there. I just found that didn't really make sense. And there's so many of them, they could just keep falling in the water and create their own little bridge.
Yeah. Well, and the Hound kicked the one, and they all either felt it or got angry about it. So they're either all connected and they all in that way, or they're more than just automatons. It was significant that when he hurt one, they all responded, I think. Maybe not, but it shows maybe a higher level of sophistication than we give them credit for. Well,
and then what I also thought was a little interesting is how they get brought back. Because we've been kind of led to believe that they can kind of come back. We were shown at Hardhome that the Night's King raised them all up at the same time.
Yeah.
But I've kind of gotten the impression that with enough time, no matter who you are when you die, you're automatically going to come back as a white.
Right.
And so here we've got Thoros with life-threatening mortal wounds, and they're all sleeping, and he actually dies. And wouldn't that have been funny if he just turned? And he didn't, and I'm curious, is because he was like a priest of the Lord of Light? Could that be a reason why? But I thought that was kind of...
Well, it seems to
take... supposed to have someone standing guard.
Yeah, it takes a little while for them to turn, but we never know exactly how much. And right, they seem to turn whether or not there's a White Walker there to turn them. And that's why you have to burn their bodies right away. So... I guess there's not that much to say about the dragons and everything until the one dies, except that it just looked awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
It's really...
Who do you think is the dragon that died? I'm saying it's Viserion.
Yeah, Viserion for sure. Oh yeah, but that means we're not going to get 3 dragon riders.
Right, right, which I think is a huge thing. And maybe Jon will go ride Rhaegal, his dad's dragon.
Yeah, I could definitely see Jon and Dany riding the remaining 2.
Yeah.
And obviously the Night's King, I don't know if he's going to ride the new one or just send him out, but it's...
Well, will he breathe ice?
Yeah, that I don't know either. There is talk in the books of ice dragons and stone dragons and stuff, but we haven't seen anything. But he probably will breathe ice.
It was sad to see, you know, like you kind of knew it was coming. It makes sense that harpoon that Qyburn made really set the precedent.
Yeah, foreshadowing for this.
Yeah.
And yeah, it looked cool the way it hit it, the way that it was blood and fire coming out. Those dragons look so powerful. I was wondering what the Night's King were going to do. I thought it was a little weird that nobody was attacking the Night's King. It looked like he was going to throw it at Drogon or Dany, which would have made perfect sense. I would have liked to have seen Viserion going after the Night's King, and that's why he chose to throw it at him. Like if he was, flying toward him, about to blow fire on him, and they had like a little standoff, that would have been a pretty tense scene. And it would have explained why he killed that one instead of the important one.
I made the comment when Dany left Dragonstone to go save them that Viserion and Rhaegal had really grown a lot since they had been in Meereen. And it really just kind of makes it that much more ominous of this idea of whoever it was, Rhaegal or Viserion, that they're a really big dragon and the Night's King has a huge ice dragon now.
Yeah. I don't know if he can fly it over the wall. I don't know how the wall magic works.
Yeah, he might.
If the dragon... I originally thought if the dragon breathes fire, they could melt part of the wall, but he probably doesn't breathe fire, so...
No, that would just be too opposite of...
But yeah, I think that by the end of next week's episode, they will be in Westeros.
Yeah, I mean, things got serious. I'm going to save this for the end of the episode. I have some ideas that have completely changed now as a result of this episode of what I think is going to happen, not only maybe next episode, but next season.
Well, it seems like the debate of is Dany going to be a mad queen or not is basically pointless now. She wants revenge for her fallen dragon, so we know where her focus is going to be.
Well, and again, I think she's also being tempered here a little bit with that scene with Tyrion, where it shows, hey, my hand is basically criticizing what I've done here. Maybe if she's going to actually listen to him and heed his counsel, I've got to do things different. And I think, if she and Jon are going to have something, or if she's going to at least care what he thinks, she's going to have to be careful too with that. What are your thoughts on the Benjen thing?
Oh, that was really dumb too. That was just, it was like Dany showing up all over again. And it was like they were just like, well, we got this Benjen guy and we don't really know what else to do with him. I
felt like they were tying up a loose end, that they had to show us something happens to Cold Hands. And, the poor guy, he's not alive, he's not dead. Or where is he supposed to go? What is he supposed to do? So this is kind of a way for him to go out in a blaze of glory and save a member of his family and things like that. And then no one has to be like, but what happened to Benjen?
Yeah, so, no, it was dumb. It was a total loose end tie-up.
Horses are slower and will fatigue more if there's two people on there. So I think it was a matter of like, well, either you go or I go. And clearly he was there to save Jon. So okay.
Yeah, I thought it was dumb.
But I mean, that's the end of Cold Hands.
Yep. So let's talk about Jon and Dany now, I guess.
I mean, part of me is wondering, are they going to be like a forbidden love? Is this kind of something where clearly they have feelings for each other? Maybe they just really understand how hard it is to be a ruler and the weight of that, and we both like to try to be honorable or something like that. And maybe it's a Targaryen thing. I don't know. But what if it's something where they love each other but they can't actually be with each other, and that makes it a little bit bittersweet, especially once Jon finds out that he's her nephew.
I've been thinking that they wouldn't really have a romance, that there's not time to develop it, and that.
But then they really pushed it here.
Yeah. So they just didn't even bother to take the time. They just jumped the gun. And I don't know. They can certainly bond over their similarities. The fact that they are related, I don't know when Jon is going to find that out.
As soon as he heads back to Winterfell.
Which it looks like next episode he's in King's Landing. I
have a feeling that there's going to be this love between them and they're going to recognize it, but then they can't be together. Yeah. And so another thing that I'll say to this is I feel that there was a dynasty theme in this episode. First, Dany doesn't want to talk with Tyrion about who's going to succeed her on the throne. Or after she dies, she says, I'm not going to discuss this till I'm on the throne. And then Jorah tells Jon to have children so that he can give his sword to them. And so, like, already here we're talking about the fact that she can't have kids, and now Jon's being told to have kids. And then Dany then tells Jon at the end, hey, I can't have kids. So they make a point to have these three things in the same episode, which speaks to a dynasty. And again, with the Targaryen line is going to end if Jon doesn't sire any children, because Dany can't. Yeah. I think it makes it that they're going to love each other but can't be with each other.
I don't think Jon is going to procreate either. I think they are.
The Targaryens are going to end? Like, do you think the dragons are going to die and the Targaryens are just going to be done and that's the end of that era in Westeros?
Yep. I think by the end of the story, Jon and Dany will both be dead.
And then it'll be a time for wolves.
Yep. Jon decides to bend the knee.
After she says, I'll give you what you want.
Right. But if his argument was before that the North isn't going to put up with that, he hasn't consulted anyone in the North.
Then Jon seems to be someone who sacrifices his vows when he falls in love with a woman.
Yeah, he's not really sticking to his guns, but...
That's the second time.
Of course, it doesn't... he should bend the knee.
Well, and they make a point to in this episode of why it could be okay for Jon to do it now. They have Tormund, who loved Mance... And you've criticized Mance and said it was Mance's pride, where I've had some differences of opinions on this one, but you and a lot of other people said, hey, Mance didn't bend the knee, and that was because of his pride. And Tormund literally uses those words. How many of our people died because of Mance's pride? And so they set that up here where maybe... Did he say that to Jon? Who was he saying that to?
He said that to Jon. He said, you're too much of a wildling now, which is what I said last week.
So, but I mean, right there, though, maybe that allows Jon to reconsider of how many people am I going to sacrifice by not doing this. So maybe...
I will say, though, that of all the wildlings that died because Mance wouldn't bend the knee, it was only Mance. Stannis killed exactly one person because Mance wouldn't bend the knee. So I think Tormund was making an argument to get us viewers to think that, but it wasn't historically correct.
Well, I guess not, because if Mance had bent the knee, I think a lot more people would have followed him and they would have gotten beyond the wall. Whereas it happened, a bunch of people fled, and that's where we have the episode Hardhome, and there wouldn't be so many extra bodies in the White's army now. So I think that's who he's referring to, that they would have followed Mance if he had said, come follow me. But since he never did that, they basically all just scattered and split, and some people went that way.
That's fair.
And that was tens of thousands, I think.
Yeah. Yep, they all could have joined Stannis' army and been alive. I think it was right of him to bend the knee, and that, of course, the White Walkers are the real threat. She has the best weapons against it. They need to be united. But his argument, I don't know if the North will be happy about it. And then also, she already said she was going to fight the Night King before he bent the knee.
Right.
So it was unnecessary, but whatever.
Well, I think they're in love with each other. Yeah. And I think they also both understand what the true enemy is, and it's the Night's King.
Yeah.
So who really cares what Cersei and the Lannisters and the North or whatever? If they can't defeat it, it's all moot.
So speaking of Cersei, I guess next week, per the previews,
yeah,
it's all going down. I don't know if there's going to be a battle or not. I'm going to guess not.
I'm thinking not. I think that whole storyline is actually not going to happen. I think everything's going to stop. I think they have that zombie that they brought back. Who's bringing it to King's Landing? The Hound?
I guess the Hound.
So that's another thing that they're tying up. I think they're going to bring the Hound and the Mountain together. How that's going to go down, I don't know.
I know. It seems right now, if they have Clegane Bowl and the Hound and the Mountain, because it looks like in the preview that they're in some big arena, whatever storytelling they got to do to make that make sense, I just don't see it. The Hound is
maybe they'll surprise us.
Well, the Hound is... The only thing I think of, he's a wanted criminal because he left the King's Guard, and Cersei wants trial by combat or something. But it's... But anyways, yeah.
But so he's bringing that, and I think that will be maybe... all of us who are like, what a ridiculous plan. Maybe their plan will actually work now that it's said and done.
I think it's going to work. That's what I said last week.
And I think they're going to show them. And I think all of Westeros is going to be like, you know what? We need you to put all these squabbles aside, fix this problem, like first problems first, and then we'll deal with the rest later. And I can see all of them potentially being smart enough to say, yeah, we got to do this. So I thought that there was going to be this whole fight, whatever. I actually think it's wrong. I think they're going to all come together and fight the Whites first.
But something's got to happen next week.
Yeah.
It could just be Clegane Bowl and the wall coming down. But
that's where I think things have changed, in my opinion, where I can actually see the Lannisters and Dany and the North working together.
At least ending the season as if they're united.
Right. I think it's always going to be a temporary thing, but isn't it always technically until someone changes their mind?
In the Hound, I just don't see what chance he has against the Mountain if they do end up fighting.
Burning him.
Yeah, I guess, it's got to be something fire.
His character will come full circle then.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, I think those were all my talking points.
Cool. Well, this was a very mixed episode for me. The action was great, but the plotting is just so dumb.
Yeah, there was just... I think they just needed a couple more people to kind of point out some of the holes. Like, I liked a lot of the action and the way that the overall story has been moving forward. Again, I think they're throwing us in different directions of what's actually going to happen. And I like that. I appreciate that. But they could have done a lot of things better for this one.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening.
Oh, can I just say I'm so glad that Tormund's still alive. I thought he was going down.
Yeah.
And they saved him, and I was happy.
It was actually a little lame that only Thoros died and a bunch of no-names, but I'm glad that's what happened because I like everyone.
That's kind of what you predicted last week, that you only saw Beric or Thoros. So.
Bum, 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 bum.
Do-do-do.